Hello, everyone. Well, there you go. Hello, everyone. My name is Cristian Martinez, and with me is Kev, and this is Casey Chase to the Pennant. We're here live after the Royals just won
Yes.
against the Milwaukee Brewers 3-2. We were both sitting here hoping that Gary Sanchez would not hit another home run, but luckily, the Royals get the win. We were going live right when Blake Perkins walked, and Gary Sanchez was coming up. Looks like it took two swings or two pitches, and the Royals have come out victorious 3-2. Winning pitchers Nick Anderson, losing pitchers Jared Cordig, and then
Yeah.
the save goes to Chris Stratton. Kev, this game has a lot of what I want to talk about today. But first of all, I'm glad that we're back.
I know. I mean, it's been kind of a tough stretch of baseball, so I'm glad we're back. And then we're able to go live again and talk baseball.
Yeah, it's great to finally kind of come back and talk baseball because it's just been a busy couple weeks and months for us. So it's finally great to talk about this 21-15 start for the Royals. Something that not a lot of people expected, even those working with the Royals. They are not working with the Royals, but in the MLB, not expect the Royals to be this great. But for them to get the win like this, where yesterday was the exact same scenario, if you think about it. It was tough. We were up by one, and then the Royals just could not hold on, which is a shame. But I'm glad that the Royals learned to an extent about what they needed to do, what needed to get done, and they got the win against a really good Brewers team, mind you.
Yeah, first place in the NL Central. And I know the NL Central is not as good as it has been the years past. The Cardinals are down. Cubs are okay. But, like you said, this team was first place in the Central, and the Royals took care of business in game one. So hopefully they can take care of business this series.
Yeah, so let's just get things started. Because something about this game that really worried me a little bit is the Royals' offense. Um, because throughout every game, and as the games pass, and the Royals get 15 wins, the
Mm-hmm.
Royals get 20 wins. Something that to me has really put a spotlight on how the Royals can improve and get better is, to me, the hitting. There's
Yeah.
a like I don't know if you guys saw this morning or this afternoon, there were reports that Luis Arise, there were talks that there were preliminary talks, like they weren't like going anywhere, but the Royals at least made the effort to go talk to Arise and talk to where was he?
The Marlins.
Miami, right? Yeah,
Yep.
the Marlins, and they wanted a guy like him on the Royals, and he ended up going to the Padres out of all teams that has a plethora of infielders, but um, it just shows you at least the Royals are serious about improving, and I think they're looking for that guy. Kev, tell me a little bit more about what you expect, what your thoughts are on the batters for the Royals and how they've done here lately.
Yeah, it's been hard. It's been a very streaky offense, and I think that's what's the frustrating thing is just when we start to see one player start to do well, the other player doesn't start to do well. It's like, right, like Vinny Pasquantino heats up, then Michael Garcia doesn't. Then Michael Garcia bounces back, then Vinny Pasquantino goes down. And the same thing with like Salvi. Salvi is on fire. Then he has a rough few games, and then so it's. I think that's been a real tough part. Is it's hard to figure out who are the consistent bats, and that's baseball. But I do think also another huge problem is that 5 through 9 in the batting order has been really rough. At least the 5 through 8. I think Kyle Isbell, he is what he is. He can give you some good at bats here and there, but the 5 through 8 has been really rough with just Velasquez, Renfroe, Frazier. Though we're starting to see Michael Massey start to turn it around, so that's positive. But it's just been, it's just been a hard to find any kind of consistency from this hitting for the Royals, and that's definitely kind of prevented them from winning a few games this year.
Yeah, we're gonna pull up some stats here, Kev, because stats will tell you everything about this team. Uh, for me, it's there. You obviously have players who have done really well. To me, the guy that I think has really led the way for KC has been Salvi. I
Yeah.
mean, his recently he's had a weird streak of games. Yesterday and today he hasn't really been on his A game, but you take those games out of just eliminate those games from his track record, and he's had, I would say, an all-star level performance these past few games, in these past couple months. You look at his stats; he got 8 home runs, 5 doubles, struck out quite a bit, but not too much. 30 RBIs, a .328 average, and he's been really the guy that's drove in a lot of runs for the Royals. He's really this engine, and whenever he's not going, you can clearly see the Royals sort of struggle. I mean, even looking at RBIs, it's there is a huge discrepancy, huge difference between a guy like Michael Massey, who has 10 RBIs, who recently just came
Yeah.
to the Royals and recently got called up, and looking at Salvi, and he has 30.
Yeah, it's kind. I mean, I think that's the big part. So much of this offense is relying on Salvi. Michael Garcia has been kind of a surprising run producer. I mean, you see he's got 22 RBI, which is really impressive for a leadoff guy. But you have guys like Vinny and Renfro and Melendez who are expected to be those RBI guys. That's where they're in the lineup, and they're not. They're not doing. I mean, Massey has only 51 plate appearances, and he only has two less. He has half the plate appearances as MJ Melendez, and he only has two fewer RBI. Yeah, that says something. That says something about the Royals' struggles offensively.
Yeah, let's talk about Vinny for a moment, because today there was this big moment, a chance for the Royals to really extend the lead. I think it was second and third. There was a throwing error. Mike Hale scores, and Bobby, I believe, gets like a base hit, or he walks or something.
They intentionally walked him.
Yeah, they intentionally walked him.
Mm-hmm.
And then Vinny comes onto the plate, and he grounds out into a double. Again, I'm not going to hammer on this guy too much because he is a really good player. Defensively, he's really good, better than what a lot of us is expected. But there is a clear signs of struggle for a lot of the players. I mean, sans Bobby Witt and Salvi, I feel like a lot of our batters, well, mainly Michael Garcia, Vinny, they've been having hot and cold streaks. Like there'll be a couple games or a couple series where the Royals have Michael and Vinny playing at their best. But then there are just other games like today where Vinny just, I don't know if it's just the pitcher or if it's just like he's not feeling it, but he just doesn't play up to potential. Michael has that issue too, because occasionally he really loves to swing at the first pitch, which can work. I mean, look at Escobar. That was something he was really good at, is swinging at the first pitch, and it would go his way. I mean, look at the playoffs in 2015, I believe.
Yeah.
But either way, I think that kind of hot and cold, I really hope kind of wanes as the season progresses. But I mean, I like what I've seen from Vinny, but the hot and cold stuff is just really, it's been iffy.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a 45.6 ground ball rate this year, and he's pulling the ball about 42% of the time. When you have that kind of two combos, especially with a guy that doesn't have really great speed like Vinny, that's going to be a double play machine, and we're starting to see that. And I think Vinny has been struggling to elevate the ball. He's had some home runs that have been really great, but it does seem he's a little bit more pull happy this year than he has been in his previous 2 years. And again, by being pull happy, he's pulling pitches that are on the outside of the strike zone. And what happens with that? Well, they become ground balls. If you're going around to around the plate to make contact with the ball, most of the time it becomes ground balls, and that's kind of what's happening. So I don't know. I don't know if it's I could see Vinny putting some pressure on himself, like maybe try to like in those moments, right? Like he's like, okay, I got to get a big hit. I got to get a big hit. And by trying to do too much, um, it's getting him in more trouble. Even that pitch, if you looked at the zone of that pitch, it was a 2-1 count, and it was a sinker inside that probably would have been a ball if he didn't swing at it. And that's just a sign of a guy who's trying to do too much at the plate, trying to win everything, trying to turn around his season, trying to turn around the Royals' fortunes in one at bat, and that more often than not, that kind of produces negative results, not positive.
All right. For those who are watching, please let us know who are some players that you really want us to talk about throughout the stream. But yeah, again, I'm gonna stop being negative now, negative Nancy. But I want to talk about really the progress of Bobby Witt Jr.
Mhm.
His at plate appearances have been insane as of recently. I mean, there's a stat that I've been referencing a lot, and that is that Bobby Witt has more triples than home runs this season. Which again,
Incredible.
I will say the one thing that really is really bothering me right now is that a lot of what Bobby Witt hits is really, fast, strong. He hits really well, but it's those freaking ballparks, man. There's those he has some really good hits and some really odd ballparks, and sometimes those really great hits that he has, I should say, just become outs. But anywhere else, in any other ballpark, it'd be a home run.
Yeah.
So I think if it weren't for all the ballparks being silly, I think Bobby Witt's home run count would be a lot higher than it is. But I mean, just looking at how he's performing as of recently, 44 hits, 10 doubles, 5 triples, 4 homers, 19 RBIs, has walked 13 times, struck out 28 times, stolen 12 bases. He's done a lot for the Royals, and he's doing what he is needed, as in lead the way for the team. But again, I am very much interested to see who else steps up, because I do see a lot of potential in guys like Melendez. Like, I know MJ's been having a cold streak as of recently, but I think that's a guy who could be a difference maker down the stretch, especially that the Royals are competitive.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I totally agree with your analysis about kind of with Bobby. His average exit velocity is 94.4 miles per hour. It's the highest on the team. His hard hit rate is 55.9, which is higher than even Salvador Perez. I mean, the guy's he's hitting the ball, but like you said, we're playing at Kauffman Stadium, and Bobby's not pulling it. So when you don't pull the ball at Kauffman Stadium, it becomes really hard to hit homers. I guarantee you, once we get on the road, once we get a road trip, including one in Los Angeles, which probably plays at Angel Stadium, plays really well to Bobby Witt's strengths, that it's a little bit more shallow in the gaps, and even MJ Melendez too. I would not be surprised if he kind of breaks out. But I think you're right. Like, who's going to step up? I think we know that Bobby Witt's legitimate. I think we all know Salvador Perez is legitimate. But after that, it's like there's a lot of question marks. We've seen streaks from Vinny. We've seen streaks from Michael. We've seen streaks from MJ and Massey and Nelson Velasquez. But we haven't seen him put it all together. And I think that's the thing we're just waiting for, is who's the guy that's going to put it all together and really start to be that number 3 guy behind Bobby and Salvi. Because right now, I don't know who it is. It just depends on the day. It just depends on the day which one is that number 3 guy.
And it's fascinating, Kev, that you talk about a number 3 and the Royals looking for a guy like Luis Arraez, who is a number 3.
Yeah.
I've talked about this with a lot of people who, really love Royals baseball. Shout out to the group chat I'm in. But there is a discussion of if the Royals can't get a number 3 from this roster, do they go out and find a number 3? It reminds me a lot of last year's pitching situation, where we were putting guys like Brady Singer and a lot of other guys who were on the pen, who were once, who were here last year, is that we put them in high stress situations.
Yeah.
We asked a lot of them. I mean, we're asking a lot of MJ Melendez. We're asking a lot for guys like Massey or even Kyle Isbell. We know what we got in Garcia. We know what we got in Vinny. We know what we got in Bobby. We know what we got in Salvi. But even Vinny and Michael, it can be on and offish. But to me, I think something that's going to be very interesting these upcoming weeks is if the Royals make a move for a number 3 guy, for someone who you can put in the bottom of the order and will perform well. You've seen got teams, I should say, like Miami, Chicago, the White Sox specifically, and a lot of other teams who really are already kind of waving the white flag.
Yeah.
Which, first of all, I'm glad the Royals are not in that situation, because last year I felt like we waved the white flag very much early, like some of these teams are doing. But again, I don't want to get negative. I don't want to talk a lot of I don't want to be a Debbie Downer on the stream, but
Yeah.
um I was hoping a little bit more from Renfro, a little bit more from Frazier. Those are guys who I thought would make the Royals off, and even Hampson. I thought those are guys that would clearly make the Royals offense better, especially Renfro, because he's a power guy. He's known to be a power guy. And while he's not going to get you 30 home runs, last year he got 20. And I thought we could expect similar production, and we might. Who knows? He might get 20 home runs this season. He might have a fiery hot start to July and maybe into August. But offensively, they felt like black holes in a way, where it feels like there's not a lot going on there. And for the Royals to at least show interest in the trade market really tells me and tells Royals fans that they are interested in at least making an upgrade however they can.
Yeah, I think the fact that they were connected to Arias, even though like it was very early stages, just yeah, you're right. I think it shows that JJ is saying, "Hey, we're trying to win," and I think when you're 21 and 15, yeah, I think that's kind of the. I think you talked about not being a downer. I think that's one way we can be optimistic is we're 21 and 15, and the offense really hasn't felt like it's been great for like 3 weeks. Like I feel like we haven't had a great offense in the last 3 weeks, and we're still 6 games over 500, which is, we would have killed for like last year, like after what we went through. But I think it's going to be hard. And a guy like Renfro is streaky, right? And it's like he was bad in April this year. He hasn't been great in May, but he is hitting the ball harder. Is he going to have like a scorching June? Yeah, it's like that's why you get a guy like Renfro, because he has a history of doing that. I think it's hard right now because really like the only teams we know are selling right now is Miami and Chicago, right? And they're going to ask for a lot. And there's some really good pieces that I think the Royals could get. Like Miami, I look at guys like Brian De La Cruz and Jesus Sanchez who are in arbitration, which means that they're going to make a lot of money, and which means that the Marlins are not going to want to pay a lot of money because they're the Marlins. But are we okay with losing some of the trade capital? I mean, the prospect capital. That are we okay with losing guys who might be big prospects in our system? I don't know. I mean, I think that's going to be the question, because I know that Peter Bendix from Miami, he comes from Tampa Bay. He's gonna ask for a lot for any Royals trade.
Yeah, that is something else I think about, is what are the Royals willing to give up to become contenders? Because let's look at the standings real quick. I want to look at the standings. So I'm going to pull it up here if I can stop the screen and share it again. Let's see right there. So let's look at the standings here real quick, and then we'll move on to pitching, because that's something I really want to talk about tonight. Mm-hmm. Look at the Central. I mean, if I can zoom in, look at that. We are essentially 2.5 games behind Cleveland.
Yeah.
We're 21-15. They're 23-12. Recently, they've been like the Royals. They've been a little hot and a little cold, especially in the last 10 games. You can see they've been 5-5. The Royals have been 5-5. But the Royals are on a 1-game win streak. Cleveland's on a 3-game win streak. And they have nearly identical run differential.
Right.
And it's, to me, even look at the home and away differences. And right now, Cleveland's facing Detroit. The Royals are against Milwaukee, who, again, really good team in the National League. But I think for the first time, it feels it feels legitimately great that we're contending.
Yeah.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize right now is that, I mean, just comparing last year to this year, Cav, it's like, but it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a day by day thing, and it's a year by year thing where it's like, we didn't even know what to expect from this, from the beginning of the season, and now the Royals are playing quality baseball. And again, there's a lot that they have to fix, and we'll talk more about some of it later. But the Royals are playing to their strengths. And just look at the wild card stuff. That's another thing too. Is that's something that not a lot of people realize either. The Royals have a very firm lead in the wild card. They're kind of close with the Twins, or
Right.
actually they're close with the Twins, but they got a spot, and they're essentially a couple games behind, or a couple games ahead of guys like Boston, Texas, Detroit, Tampa Bay. Like these four teams is who I worry about down the stretch. If the Royals are not unable to really catch Cleveland, is you have to win those games against a team like Tampa, a team like Detroit, a team like Texas, and a team like Boston. Because these teams, I don't know where they're going to go. They're kind of in limbo. But, well, we already know where Chicago is right now.
Right. Yeah. Chicago's pretty clear where they're going to be.
Chicago's pretty clear. But everyone else is just like, man, they can keep it competitive. There's a chance that we see the wild card kind of fluctuate this year. And even then, if you put the Royals in wherever Seattle is, we'd be first place, which again, says a lot that we're one of the best teams in the American League. But overall, I mean, to me, Kev, it is amazing to see the Royals compete. I think even as Royals fans, we remember how it felt to watch the Royals win in 2014, 2015, even 2016. It felt amazing to have winning baseball in Kansas City. And we've missed that. You can even tell when you go to Kauffman, when you go to the K, you can see that people miss that. You can tell that people have been wanting this, have been yearning for this for years. And to see it pay off is great. And I give credit to JJ. I give credit to Q. I give credit to everyone at the Royals for, embracing a winning culture and making winning culture changes. But with that being said, the one thing I do want to see, like if the Royal, like you told me, the way to determine how the Royal season will go is by Memorial Day, which I believe is at the end of May.
Yep.
That means if the Royals are above 500 and have a comfortable above 500 record, that means to me that we gotta buy. We have to buy.
I mean, I totally agree with you. And you look at the schedule, right? Like if you're looking at, okay, what's the schedule going to look like till Memorial Day? We got this tough series against Milwaukee now. Then we got 4 against the Angels. I kind of take that back. I think the Angels are we know where they're going to be. Like the Angels, they don't have Mike Trout. He's going to be out for most of the year. And then they're just been hitting the skids. So, they can take advantage against the Angels, the Mariners. Then they got Twins, or then they got A's, Tigers, Rays, Twins, and then Padres to end the month. So, I mean, it's kind of a pretty balanced schedule. But I think you're right. Like, if this team is over 500 and they get through that stretch, you got to say, like, hey, like, the playoffs are realistic here. This is not like I don't think you could say, it's just a hot month. I think 2 good months of play means that the Royals have got to be like, hey, we got to get better, and it probably starts with our offense.
Yeah. So let's go to pitching real quick.
Yeah, I agree. It's depressing talking about the hitting.
My good friend Tyler, All Royals, has made us some really good graphics. Now, mind you, a lot of these stats come from May 3rd. They're not really updated because he made them for me a little bit earlier, and we were going to go live, but weather stuff kind of occurred. But regardless, these stats do really show how these certain pitchers have performed. And let's look at something for the first time on the show: the KC Chase Pennant Spotlight Player. And I wanted to highlight Seth Lugo, because what a grab for Kansas City.
Yeah.
Take it away, Ken.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I mean, you see it right here from his numbers. It's. I mean, obviously, we knew that when Seth Lugo was acquired, we knew that he was going to limit walks. You see that from his 2.2 walk per nine, and and we're starting to see the strikeouts just bump up a little bit. So it's at 6.2. Before, like I'd say a couple weeks ago, it was like around the 4 range, but he's constantly keeping the hits down. He's his WHIP, his ERA. This was just a great deal. And I know some people were kind of critical because they were saying, hey, like, do you want to give Seth Lugo, who's 34 years old, a 3-year deal? And I mean, just his arsenal, he throws like 7 pitches. He throws 5 of those pitches at above average rates based on the metrics. He does all the little things that you want to see from a pitcher. And if you look at things like Stuff Plus, for example, Lugo still has a solid Stuff Plus at 99, which is really rare for a starter. It's the 4th best rate in Stuff Plus of any pitcher on the Royals right now. His cutter, his slider, his curveball are all above average on Stuff Plus. So it's I know Reagans gets a lot of the accolades, and rightfully so. But there's no doubt that Seth Lugo has probably been the number 2 starter. Even I know Brady Singer's been good, but not as good, I think, as Seth Lugo. And that's just my 2 cents.
I agree. I mean, sorry, I just unshowed the Lugo stats, but just 5-1.
Yeah.
5 wins, 1 loss. The ERA is perfect. And even with his low strikeouts, the low amount of strikeouts he has, he is amazing at ground balls,
Yes,
flyouts, pop-ups. Like he knows what to throw, and that's something that the Royals really need. And I'm more amazed. And we talked about how Lugo could be the ace; he could be the number 1 guy. But we know that Reagans is the number 1. We know that he's going to give us quality innings. He's going to perform day by day really well. Just look at today. He had 8 strikeouts. That home run was I would say Gary Sanchez was waiting on that pitch.
He was.
And it was a good pitch, but it was an even better hit. And you can't do anything about that in the majors. So, but either way, I mean, Reagans has been phenomenal. But then you look at Lugo, and to me, Lugo has shown more consistency throughout the 5. And we'll talk about one of the pitchers who I think I'm hoping that improves over time. But either way, I'm very satisfied with what Lugo's provided for the Royals, because he's, I would say, the main reason that they're even winning in the first place. But let's go to Michael Wacha. So Wacha, I just said there's a pitcher I wish would really kind of step it up. And to me, it's Michael Wacha. Again, Michael Wacha has a lot of great stuff. His changeup, phenomenal. He in a way is like Lugo, where he really pitches for contact. He really takes advantage of his defense. But you can tell that there are moments where Wacha really lets the ball hang on too much, or really puts it in a bad spot. But other than that, I mean, looking at his other stats, 95 ERA plus, a strikeout per 9 innings of 7.4, walks per 9, 2.4, hits per 9, 9.5. Kev, what are your thoughts on Wacha's start to the season?
Yeah, it's been rough. I've been to 2 Wacha starts where he's gotten roughed up. I went to the game on Saturday where he got kind of roughed up, and I think the numbers didn't include this start. So, and then I remember I went to one. I can't remember who it was against, but it was another start against Baltimore, I think, and it was just brutal. And I think the biggest issue with Wacha is, he's unlike Seth Lugo, who's getting the ground balls. It's not really happening for Wacha. His ground ball percentage is 37.8. That's about 4% lower than Michael Wacha. And, one of the things, too, is that Wacha's changeup is better than ever. If you look at PLV, which is kind of a metric that kind of rates pitch quality, it's based on Kyle Bland's from Pitcher List kind of metric on PLV. His changeup is one of the best pitches in baseball. The problem is the rest of his pitch mix is really bad. His four-seamer is not as effective as it used to be. His sinker is one of his worst pitches. His sinker and cutter are both 20th percentile pitches based on PLV. And I think that's what's killing him. It's like he's become a one-pitch guy. And he's elevating the four-seamer and those pitches too much, and guys are killing him on it. And we saw that what happened against Texas, a good team with good hitters. They really just took advantage. And when I was at that game, like Waka just wasn't fooling anybody. And I worry about Waka in that sense is the peripheral stats aren't as bad. Like, I mean, you look at the FIP, you look at the ERA plus, it's like, well, it's not so bad. But can he, and obviously like he's not walking guys, which is good, and he's still striking out a decent amount, but can he limit like the power? Can he limit those outings where he melts down? Seth Lugo's avoided that. Cole Reagan's had that one start against Houston, and then since then he's kind of put it on the back burner. We haven't really seen that from Waka yet. So I think that's going to be a real challenge. I think the good thing is like thankfully JJ Piccolo also got Seth Lugo in addition to Mike Waka. It's not like we just had Michael Waka as the only guy. If we only did, we'd be in trouble. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to think of him. I think he'll bounce back, but I'm glad he's our number 4 starter. He's not our number 1 starter.
Yeah, for sure. Because if Waka was our number 1, woof,
indeed,
it would be an interesting season. But yeah, you're right. The Lugo and Waka signings, I think, are very important to this Royals team right now, because you take away the fact that Waka has allowed a lot of runs or has been kind of iffy recently. But I mean, just looking at how he started really well.
Yeah.
And I think right now it's just every pitcher, no matter what, you look at Reagans, you look at Singer, you look at everyone that's on this Royal staff, is you're going to have your shaky starts. But it's all about how you bounce back. It's all about how you come back. And I have hope for Waka because I really do want him to work out here in KC. I think he's going to be a very important pitcher this year, and I believe we signed him on for next year. So it would be great for him to really try to figure out overall what to do with his pitches. Because if his changeup is nasty, he's got to find something else that's nasty too. You can't be a one-trick pony in the league unless, like, if somehow your 2 pitches or 3 pitches are some of the best in baseball, you got to have a good arsenal. Speaking of starters, we talked about Singer for a second, but let's talk about Singer right now. Brady Singer, another guy that has been playing really well for the Royals, a 2.62 ERA, has pitched in 34.1 innings, 34 strikeouts, and his advanced stats, again, just me looking at this, have been pretty good. But Singer's another guy who I have been really, really satisfied with how he's performed. I mean, even just looking at comparing his season this year to last season, it is a enormous step up. And he's really proved that he has that deadly slider, that he has really good pitches, that he's really improved as a pitcher. And again, a big reason why the Royals are playing really well early on in the season.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give Singer credit. He was kind of pushed this offseason to kind of really add another pitch, and he's made his 4-seam fastball that pitch. And the 4-seam fastball is not a great pitch by any means. He throws it like somewhere around 8 and 10% per game. If you look at like Stuff Plus or PLV metrics, it rates very poorly. But it's another pitch. And what that pitch has done is it's kind of been a show-me pitch, and it's made his sinker and his slider a lot better as a result. The one thing that's really been great about Singer is that his command. He's a little different pitcher than like a Cole Reagans. Cole Reagans, when he throws, he wants to locate the 4-seamer up, because if he locates the 4-seamer up, everything else kind of plays off of that. Singer's a little different. He throws everything low in the zone. He wants his sinker, his 4-seamer, and his slider to all kind of be thrown in the same area of the zone, and then he can get hitters to either swing and miss or like make bad contact because they all look the same. And that's basically Singer's sequencing has been phenomenal this year. He's really been able to really command in that zones. He's not making mistakes. Singer's model of sequencing is very similar to like Zach Gallen. That's kind of how Zach Gallen succeeds, is by getting low in the zone with a sinker, fastball, and slider, and then kind of dominating there rather than up like a Cole Reagans or a Blake Snell. So I got to give credit to Singer for putting in that work, and also Brian Sweeney and the pitching coaching staff for really like helping him iron that command out.
That's right. And again, Brian Sweeney, thank you. I mean, I would again, there's a lot. We're going through other pitchers, but he has really been proving his worth here with the Royals, because whether it be his development with Lugo and Waka, Singer, Reagans, Alec Marshall, we'll talk about here next, Zerpa, MacArthur, Sauer, John freaking Schreiber, who everyone was dumping on because of the Sandlin trade, and now John Schreiber is a guy that we can rely on in the pen. So, but just back to Singer, I mean, a lot of people remember last year and Singer wasn't really great, but adding that new pitch, really working on his command, really staying cool under pressure, because there were points last year where you can tell that he kind of breaks down, Tom Petty style, and he really just kind of lets everything go, and it becomes a rough inning. I mean, it's kind of like how Daniel Lynch always has that first pitch issue or first inning issue where he like again, the start that he had recently, he is not great in the first inning, but everything else is fine.
Yeah.
And to me, Singer had that issue where like there was that one big problem that was keeping him from being a really good starter, and Sweeney and the staff fixed it. So fingers crossed that he continues to perform like this. Let's talk about Alec Marsh, because that's a guy who unfortunately was injured. Got smacked with the ball. I think it was when was it? It was a couple weeks ago, I want to say. Where he just got
he was having a good start, and he just got hit right back with the ball.
But just looking at his stats right now, a 2.7 ERA, 17 strikeouts, 26.2 innings pitched. I would say he is succeeding at what he needs to do, and that is to be the number 5 guy, because unfortunately Lyles has some family issues or some personal issues that he has to attend, and really hasn't been with the Royals for quite a bit. But I think the Royals really did make the right choice with Marsh, because Marsh has proven to really provide quality innings, play quality baseball, and give the Royals a chance to win, even if he's not getting a lot of strikeouts, even if he gets himself in a jam. He at least knows how to get out to an extent, and it's really helped the Royals, again, when it comes to the 5th day, when they need a number 5 guy, they can, reach out to Marsh, and Marsh gets the job done.
Yeah, one of the things is, and Marsh is a pretty strong example of kind of what Sweeney and and Quatrero kind of brought from like kind of the Rays kind of theory of pitching, which was Marsh has stuff. And basically they're saying, you know what, Marsh, let's not worry about trying to pinpoint every zone. Let's just let your stuff work. And you could see at times when he moved to the bullpen last year that he was letting that stuff work and just not worried about being like perfect. And it had a big effect. And we're seeing that from Marsh now. Like you said, the strikeouts, they're still a little low. Okay. But you can see from the FIP, you can see from all the other numbers, he's getting results. And he's getting results because he's got great pitches. His sinker is a great pitch. His slider is a great pitch. He's got a good curveball. He's velocity, shape, it's all real positive. And why is he being successful? Because Sweeney and Quatrero are saying, you know what, just let it rip, man. Just let it. And you could see how he works. Marsh works very quick. He works very quick on the mound, and he gets in rhythm, and he just looks like a different guy. And like you said, I don't know what's going to happen with Lyles. He's ever since he kind of went on the inactive list. It's been kind of crickets, which I hope everything's okay. But it's like, hey, like I don't know if we're going to see him again this year. And then, Lynch was good, but I still would rather have Marsh. Marsh has the upside, and he's like, if he's your number 5 starter, it's like, hey, we're in good shape.
Yeah, and even then, there were reports coming out this morning that Bubic is slowly coming back. And I think they don't need to rush him. I don't think they do.
No.
Take your time. Let this pot roast properly. Do not push Bubich out, because otherwise you're gonna come out with raw meat, you're gonna come out with undercooked veggies, and it's not gonna be great. It's not gonna be a great stew.
Exactly.
So let him cook a little bit, let him enjoy his time in the minors, keep him on a pitch count, do what you gotta do, because Marsh is delivering. He's doing what he needs to do with this Royal staff, and it's working. And again, it is amazing to finally talk about how great this pitching staff has been. Take away, Will Smith's slight issues, Stratton being on and off, hot and cold. Other than those two pitchers, everyone else has been great. Everyone else has at least done enough for the Royals to win games.
Yeah.
And I would rather have Will Smith and Stratton struggling than having the entire pen struggling. Because when the entire pen struggles, that becomes a problem. But luckily, right now, Will Smith and Stratton, they can work on their stuff. Stratton had a great game tonight. Played really well, did what he had to do. But like Will Smith, that's a guy who you can be like, how about you take a couple weeks off? Or how about we're going to let you work something out, see what's going to happen. And if you don't fit in this team right now, then we might have to move on. But for the sake of the good luck charm, we'll keep you around. But yeah, and let's talk about the bullpen now. Because one guy who, again, I mentioned and I really want to talk about is John Schreiber, someone the Royals acquired this offseason in a trade for Sandlin in exchange for Schreiber. And look at those numbers, man. If that doesn't get you running out in the street and yelling, thank the Lord. Because Schreiber stats, 0.63 ERA, has pitched 14 innings, 10 strikeouts, and his advanced metrics have been insane. Look at that ERA plus. That's crazy. That's a really good number. That's a number you want. Even his FIP. Just this is a guy that I see becoming the anchor for the bullpen. Who is the anchor? Who's the guy that, if, let's say, theoretically, if the Royals are in the playoffs, you go to this guy. You go to him. If it's a game 7, you go to him. If it's a game 5, you go to this man, because he can provide you quality innings. He can provide you quality performance, and you know what he has. And if he keeps it up, he's probably going to be one of the best relievers in the majors, one of the best relievers in the MLB. And for the Royals to get a guy like him in exchange for Sandlin, who we don't even know what we're going to get from him, it's huge. It's amazing.
Yeah. No, and I totally agree. And I think it was, Sandlin had a lot of upside. I know he was seen as a top 5 prospect by some prospect guys on like in Royals Nation, essentially. But, I always thought that was a little optimistic for Sandlin's outlook. And Schreiber has just – the one thing about Schreiber, too, is like he can get guys out without having to get the strikeout. And it's like he can get the ground balls. He can induce the weak contact. He can handle the high leverage situations. He brings a lot of intensity, and you can kind of see it in that picture, right? It's like he brings a lot of the intensity that it feels like this bullpen hasn't had in a while, not since like the HDH days. I guess maybe Barlow kind of brought a little bit, but not like Schreiber. And I think you're right. You have a very seeds of who's going to be the guys that are going to be dependent on. Schreiber's definitely part of that mix. The general, James MacArthur, is part of this mix. And don't sleep on Angel Zerpa, who's certainly become like a very like dependable middle innings arm. Who's he's had a phenomenal start to this year too, and it just doesn't get talked about enough because Schreiber and MacArthur have just been so awesome this year.
Let's talk about the general while we were at it. James MacArthur, what a closer! What a closer! I mean, and what did we get from him? We got from him like a bag of guys' potato chips and
maybe
half a can of soda. Let's just look at his numbers. That's a closer right there. That screams to me that this guy can become a guy like Davis.
Yeah.
Like Holland. Herrera, we won't touch Herrera because Herrera was more of a middle innings guy. He wasn't really a closer. But Holland, Wade Davis, That's something you need in a playoff team. You need a guy that can go out there and shut everything down. Say, this game is done. I'm going to make sure it's done. So 7 saves, a 2.63 ERA. I know that what was it yesterday? He had a rough
Yeah.
outing, but he made up for it.
Yeah.
Again, Royals weren't able to get the win, but he can only do so much.
Right.
But 2.63 ERA as of May 3rd, 13 innings pitched, 15 strikeouts, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And he's really proven himself as a reliever. Again, to get this guy for basically practically nothing, to me screams of the Royals are making quality trades, know who they're getting in their guys, and are, to me, developing players at a level that we haven't seen in a very long time, Kev. I mean, think about the last time the Royals would have made a trade like this and they would have developed to become a closer. I mean, this screams to me of Brewers, Lorenzo Cain,
Yeah.
Esky. Like, these are the moves you have to make to compete in the Central. Because then right now, as we're competing, we got the Central shivering their timbers. We got them shaking their boots. We got people saying that that umps are helping us out, that we're getting help from the MLB, that we're frauds. In reality, we just have awesome players at majority of the spots here in this organization. And again, MacArthur is a guy who is one of those like major players.
Yeah, I think he's, we talk about who does he remind you of. I mean, I think he has a lot of that Wade Davis. Remember, like Wade Davis was a big pitcher, like size-wise, big pitcher. And like MacArthur, I mean, when MacArthur was seen as a starter in Philadelphia. That's why he got designated for assignment, because the Phillies were like, this guy's not a starter, and we expect him to be a starter. The Royals, Piccolo had the foresight to say, you know what, you're not a starter. We're going to make you into a reliever, just like Wade Davis. Because remember, Wade Davis's first year in Kansas City in 2013, he was a starter, and he was not a very good one. But the Royals said, hey, you are a reliever. And Wade Davis, probably for a 3 to 4 year span, was one of the best closers in baseball. Now, I'm not sure MacArthur is going to be one of the best closers in baseball now, but he is pretty good. And I think he has that potential, especially if, he can kind of own in on that sinker a little bit. But yeah, I mean, like you said, the Royals, that shows you like the Royals scouting, not just like amateur scouting, but their professional scouting, knowing that, hey, there's this MacArthur guy. He's on waivers. We should acquire him. That shows the organization has come a long way, because a lot of other teams had a chance to get James MacArthur, and only the Royals were able to get him. So I think that's a positive sign going forward.
Let's talk about a guy who also was viewed as a starter and made his way to the pen, Angel Zerpa.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put up his stats right here. It's another guy who, again, is becoming dependent. And you need that right now for the future, because if fingers crossed, we make it to the playoffs, we need guys who we can depend on. And Zerpa is becoming one of those guys. As of May 3rd, his ERA is 2.19. Has pitched 12 innings, has 12 strikeouts. Advanced stats have been pretty good too.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, Zerpa screams of a guy who can come in and play long innings. Like, that is something that I'm impressed with in terms of the Royals' kind of development. Is Zerpa, they could have called him a lost cause and wipe their hands off of it and call it a day. Trade him, send him somewhere else. But for the Royals to see this guy and say, okay, you're going to be our lengthy reliever. If we need a guy to pitch 2 innings, or if we need a guy to come up and clean up this mess, we're calling you. We're calling the janitor, and that's you. And you're going to clean this mess up, and then you're going to help us win this game. And Zerpa's done that. And a lot of, even if you think about it, some of our relievers have done that, because sometimes a reliever's not feeling it. It's not his day. It's not his week. It's not his month. It's not his year. And there has to be a guy who can come up and be the janitor and clean messes up. And for me, Zerpa is that guy.
Yeah, and look at that, the walk per 9, 2.2. And if you look at the Royals' top relievers, last year, right? The last year the Royals K to walk ratio as a relief core was one of the worst in baseball. You have guys like now MacArthur, Zerpa, Schreiber, who have under 2 walks per nine. That's huge. That is shows that the Royals talked all about, hey, raid the zone. Well, that's finally happening. They finally got guys who are now saying, hey, you got to throw strikes. And if you can't throw strikes, you're not going to be here in Kansas City very long. And Anahel Zerpa, right? I mean, this was a guy that was not on any prospect radar. Then the Royals added him to the 40-man roster to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. A lot of people are saying, hey, who is this guy? Why did they protect him? And now, like, a few years later, he's like one of our best relievers. Like, he's the guy I probably trust after Schreiber and MacArthur right now, which says a lot.
It does says a lot. It does say a lot about Zerpa as a pitcher that we're putting him in that big three. Let's talk about a guy that again has come up, has played well for the Royals as well. That's Matt Sauer. Was originally a Yankees guy, and then the Royals picked him up and put him in the 40-man roster and put him in the majors, in the MLB, and his stats have been good too. 2.38 ERA, 11 innings pitched, 5 strikeouts, advanced metrics. He's been doing good. He's not crazy good, but he's not like insanely awesome like a Devin Williams or I don't know, Class A or anyone like that. But he's getting the job done too.
Yeah, and I think with Sauer, he's a Rule 5 guy. He hasn't pitched above Double-A until this year, so I mean that kind of explains why his walks are high, his strikeouts are low. He had a bad outing on Saturday. But here's the thing about Sauer, and this is why I think the Royals are sticking with him, is stuff-wise, it's there. Like, if you look at Stuff Plus, his Stuff Plus is second best on the team overall. The only people that are third best on the team. He's only behind Cole Reagans and James MacArthur in terms of his pitch quality. That's pretty remarkable. Now, his command and his location is not good, and that's why he has a 7.1 walk per nine. But his actual stuff has really potential. I'm wondering how patient the Royals are going to be with him, though, because you need that mop up guy, but he's only been really pitching in like blowouts or when the game is out of line. He hasn't. And at the end of the day, if the Royals are a playoff team, they're going to need guys that are going to be able to pitch in high leverage situations regardless. So, I think he's going to be on here for at least another month. But I'm curious that if the Royals are in June and they're winning and, they're going to need bullpen help, is Sauer going to be the odd man out? Because if they do option him, he has to go back to the Yankees as a Rule 5 pick, unless like the Royals want to trade to acquire him. But so that's going to be a really interesting dilemma. I think the Royals are constantly saying, hey, let's just try to keep working on and developing him because he has this potential. But I'm also worried that, with the team being as competitive as they are, they might say, hey, we got to get guys who can pitch right now and pitch in key situations.
Let's get into that now while we're at it, because I want to look at the future of this team. Obviously, we'll be here next week to talk more about the upcoming games. But it is fascinating to me that the Royals are in this position, that they have to choose, because a guy that you interviewed with the rest of the Farm the Fountains fam, Walter Pennington, that's a guy you cannot keep in the minors anymore. Like, the fact that his production has been insane in AAA, he's a lion in a cage waiting to come out.
Yes.
Literally waiting to come out. Like, the things that he would do to this team, the things that he would do for this team would push us to the next level. Sam Long, another guy who I think deserves to be a reliever here with the Royals in the majors. He's another guy who I think should be playing for the Royals right now. And he's been playing pretty well in the minors. Even looking at hitters, I mean, just going back to the offense, I mean, Drew Waters, what do you do with him? What do you do with Prado? What do you do with Tolbert? What do you do with these guys who clearly there can be a path for them to come to the MLB and produce? But I think the challenge here for the Royals is looking at the contracts they gave out and saying, are we gonna bite on it? Are we just gonna say this didn't work out and we're gonna move on? Because that's another thing about a competitive team is no matter what, you have to make those choices.
Yeah.
Because, Renfroe, it's hard to choose between, like, you want to keep a guy like Renfroe around because of his arm, because of his potential as a batter. But then you look at guys like Frazier, Hampson, you look at guys like Will Smith, who right now has been playing great, as you mentioned on Twitter, had some scoreless innings and has been playing really well as of recently, and has gotten out of situations that, back then he would not have gotten out of. But there are a lot of veterans that I see on this roster who I say, can there be an improvement? Or like even a guy that I wish that I would want to see in AAA, Nelly. Nelly's a guy who I think needs to go back to AAA for a bit, because we know in the beginning of the season started off really well. He had a really good swing. He was finding the pitch as well, but something happened. I don't know if it was a couple of games. I don't know if it was a series, but something happened within them, and he can't really hit the ball like he used to. And we need that right now, especially that our pitching has, showcased that they can keep up with other teams. They've kept up with other teams who have been really well, and this offense is a little sluggish. They're taking a little bit to really get going, and they remind me a lot of the Royals of 2014 and 2015 in a sense, because those teams were the same way. I mean, go watch the playoffs. Go watch 2014, go watch 2015 highlights. The Royals really never got off to a hot start. They were really cold. They weren't really threatening to win, but it was right when the 7th inning came around, something clicked, and then they would go off.
Yeah.
And that could be the identity for the Royals, but to me, right now, you are behind Cleveland by 2.5 games. You have a wild card spot, and you are up 1-2 games against other teams. You have to, I think, this is just me, but you have to capitalize.
Yeah.
You have to make those brutal calls. You have to make that call up, because otherwise, if complacency can catch up to you, if you're complacent enough, something will happen, and then the Royals will make a mistake, and then they'll try to fix it real quick, and it won't work. But to me, like, I really want to see guys like Pennington, guys like Long, guys like Lofton. Like Lofton, I want to see back on this roster. I want to see guys like Drew Waters on this roster, even Nick Prado. But if you're not going to bring them up, Kev, then they have to be viewed as trade pieces, right? Because if they're not even going to, because if there's a stopgap, or if they're going to be essentially, waiting until someone gets injured, you would think they would become trade pieces, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the case, right? Like, I mean, I feel, I don't know. I mean, it's a tough dilemma, because, as you said, you never know when somebody's going to get hurt. The Royals learned that the hard way last year, where they were kind of depending on a lot of guys, and guys got hurt, and they had no backup plan. Now we can say that, for the Royals, they're in a lot better shape in that end. But and I think it's going to be interesting, because I totally agree with you on Nelson. Even MJ Melendez, I see a lot of people saying MJ Melendez should go to AAA. You see the flashes with Melendez. Like, you see Melendez hit the ball hard. There's a lot of, he hasn't been really lucky. He's hit a lot of balls that have been hard. You haven't really seen that from Velasquez. In Velasquez, and you can't, if you have to choose one of those two guys, I'm going with Melendez every time. And I think Drew Waters makes sense as a call up, because one, Waters is good defensively, and the reality is they need to improve the right field defense. I think Renfroe would be better off being a DH, and then I think you have Drew Waters in the outfield, and that will help improve the outfield defense with having MJ and Isbell and Waters out there. So that's how I view that. But you're right. I don't know, though. If the Royals are going to keep Waters and Prado and some of those other guys in AAA, then you're right. They probably are trade bait, and they probably are going to be flipped for somebody like a more proven vet that is going to help them, with their offensive woes, or maybe strengthen their bullpen.
So yeah, to me, like, I think Waters is the guy. I think you call him up. But again, it is going to be interesting to see what the Royals do in terms of trades, because I think an idea something that came up to in mind right now is they could take up other contracts that are similar to some of the contracts they have right now.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Frazier's contract. You can easily find a deal within any team that has that same amount of money, and then there wouldn't be really a loss. It would just be kind of like tradesies, or it would be a good deal for both teams because in this case, no one's really losing any money.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just taking up someone else's contract. But I'm fascinated again with the news that came out this morning. If the Royals will package a veteran like Renfroe and then package a young guy and then trade him. So, with that being said, it's been really nice talking to Royals baseball.
Absolutely.
It's been really nice to catch up with you, Kev. It's been really nice to talk about the Royals in general. But we're gonna wrap up the show. It's gonna be awesome to see what the Royals do this week. And my prediction is that they get a couple wins here against the Brewers, and then forget who they play next. Angels, right?
Angels, yeah.
That Angels series is going to be crucial. Yep. So
you got to at least win 3 there. You got to at least win 3 in Anaheim.
Yeah, if you get 3 in Anaheim, that gives you a very comfortable lead.
Yep.
So
exactly.
Well, with that being said, Kev, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you so
guys.
much, Cristian.
Yeah, thank all 34 of you guys who are listening, who are watching. We really appreciate you guys. We will be back next week, and obviously you guys saw the intro. I'm rebranding the channel. I wanted to do something that's very much more Royals based, and it's been really nice to kind of work on that. And now that school's done, I'm going to be working on this channel a lot more, so expect a lot more content. And hopefully we'll bring a lot more guys from Farm the Fountains and some other people within the Royals kind of world of sports journalism who I really want to bring on. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Kev. We will see you guys next week.